Okay, we're on Q2 now from the FRQ packet. This is from the original 2016 FRQ packet, question 5. So Google 2016 number 5. That's 2016, yeah. Yes. So for part A, assume conditions for inference have been met. When it says that, that means don't check the assumptions. They've already been confirmed. You need to do everything else, but you don't need to check the assumptions. So you need to find your interval. This one, I've seen this throw people off. I tried to put it in the review video. Hopefully you caught it here. So we want the percent that shows the economy statement. That's 37%. But in order to use our feature on the calculator, we have to be in fraction format. So it's 0.37 equals x over 1048. So that means that x equals 0.37 times 1048, which is 387.76. Always round to the nearest whole number here, because this is a fraction that already exists, so it would be the closest number. It's not one we're trying to predict for the future. Happens to be the same, we still round up here, but you wouldn't always round up. You go to the closest. So 388 over 1048 to get this interval. Oh, look, that's what they got. Make sure you have the name of your procedure. We're 95% confident the population proportion of all adults in the US who would have chosen the economy statement is between 0.34099 and 0.39946. To read theirs, we're 95% confident that the population proportion of all adults in the US who would have chosen the economy statement. Yep, that's pretty much verbatim what I wrote. So let's check what they said here. So section 1 consists of the mechanics of the confidence interval in part A. So essentially correct if you state the correct procedure by name or formula. I did it by name, but you could have done it by formula. And they calculated the confidence interval. So that's section 1, are those two things. So that means so far I've gotten an E. Partially correct if you have one of the two components. Oh, that's nice. You don't even have any idea what you're doing. You make up an interval, you get a partially correct just for getting the name. Section 2 is interpreting the confidence interval. Essentially correct if we include the following 4 components. We estimate a proportion. Yeah. We infer about the population. So that could have been done again by saying population proportion, true proportion, or all. I had double on this one. State the 95% confidence. And include context. That's all context right there. Partially correct if you satisfied components 1 and 2 and only one of the others, or if you gave a correct interpretation of the confidence level. Note any indication of the adults sampled rather than the population does not satisfy component 2 and scored as an I. So I said who would have chosen. If you said who did choose the economy statement, not every adult was asked, so I can't word it that way. They actually said that would be scored as an I. So if you refer to the sample instead of the population, you thought I was being mean earlier in the year when I did stuff like this, make sure it's definitely the population. If you said who did choose the economy statement, that's the sample who chose. And then section 3. Was parts B and C together. So for part B, it said, why would we do the greater than 10 thing? This, remember, shows the sampling distribution can be well approximated by a normal curve. Let's see what they wrote. This condition is necessary because the formula for confidence interval relies on the fact that the binomial distribution can be well approximated by a normal distribution. which then results in the sampling distribution of p hat being approximately normal. That is a much better answer than mine. This approximation does not work well unless both np and n times 1 minus p hat are at least 10. That is a better answer. I thought about writing that. I probably should have. If I were taking the AP exam, I would have, and hopefully you will too. Let's see what was required. You had to state that the condition implies that the sampling distribution of p hat is approximately normal, or the normal approximation to the binomial distribution is appropriate. Okay. Oh, notes referring to the sampling distribution needing to be normal without explicitly stating p hat satisfies component 1. Okay, so that means I did get credit here. Remember, these are scored together. Let's see what other notes they said. Referring to normal approximation must specify to binomial to satisfy component 1. So either you needed to talk about the sampling distribution being well approximated, or that a binomial distribution can be well approximated by a normal curve. One of those, the sampling distribution or the binomial distribution part. Okay, and then part C says blah, blah, blah. Would it be appropriate to use a 2 sample Z interval to compare the proportion of adults who chose the economy statement and adults who chose the environment statement? So can we compare these 2 proportions using a 2 proportion Z-test? On the surface, that might seem like a great idea, but remember, one of our assumptions is that we have 2 independent random samples. That would only be 1 random sample. They both came from the same sample. We can't compare 2 numbers that came from the same sample like that. So let's see what they wrote. The suggested procedure is not appropriate because one of the requirements is a blah, blah, blah. It's based on 2 independent samples. Great. So it's pretty much exactly what I said. A 2 sample Z interval for difference between proportions, that's a 2 proportion Z interval. That's the same thing. So part C indicates the procedure is not appropriate. So it's not appropriate because the 2 proportions come from a single sample. Rather than 2 independent samples. Yep, so I'm good there. Hopefully you are too. Essentially correct if you had both of those, partially correct if you had one of the 2. So if you got hung up on the 2 sample Z interval versus the 2 proportion Z interval, they didn't take off any points, but you had to talk about the random sample to get credit. It was considered extraneous information. Okay, so 3 E's is a 4. So remember, we got 1 E from these 2 things together. We got 1 E from our conclusion, and then 1 E from these 2 parts scored together. 2 E's and a P is a 3. EEI, EPP, or EPI, or PPP is a 2 out of 4. Lots of ways to get a 2 out of 4 per usual. EII is a 1 out of 4. PPI is a 1 out of 4. Less than that is a 0 out of 4. So we've got our 3 E's here for 4 out of 4. You write down whatever you got. Hopefully you did well.